Konkinak semdol kake mofaseda.
You live?
Absolutely. But I know exactly what my job on this podcast is, and it does not require me to have played the game.
No, yeah, okay. Tell me when to start. All right. We'll start that again. Welcome to Talking in Stations, an EVE Online podcast recorded live. I am your host, Matterall, and with me today is Apothny.
Hello.
How you doing, Apothny?
Pretty good. I've been crazy busy in March, but I'm currently flying spaceships, and it's great.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, McLeod, for that funny intro with the Rick roll. That's our April Fool's joke for you guys. But now we're going to get to some serious spaceship business. And first, we're going to talk a little bit about test and what's going on with them. And then we're going to turn to the main topic of the show, which is going to be the NETC changing of hands. And that is the New Eden Trade Network. And joining us for that will be Pfeiffer and, as you can see, the Space Pope.
Hello.
Pfeiffer, how are you doing?
Hi. I'm doing fine. I'm actually pretty
Great.
happy.
And Max, how are you?
Oh, blessings be. Doing okay. Can't see crap, but I'm doing okay.
All right. Well, we'll assume it's like some Amar ritual that you're participating in. Okay, and
We'll just go with that.
Yeah. Also, later in the show, we'll talk doctrines with an FC from the initiative, Pando. How's it going, Pando?
Hey, doing good.
Awesome. So we'll learn about Snatch Fleet, the Ravens, and other stuff as well. But first, we want to get to the pressing news of Test and their war with Fraternity and basically defending themselves in Catch. Villy is here to talk to us about that. How's it going?
Hi, it's going pretty well. I'm always pleased to join you guys over on the Situation Room with Matterall.
Yeah, thanks. You're like somebody that really puts a lot of light on what's going on in EVE, so we're always happy to have you. But the focus today is the last week you guys have been really seriously kicking some butt. So what's been going down? How's this started and where's it going?
Well, we've been defending ourselves in Catch for approximately, several months. It's been business as usual, just trying to hold our slice of space as best we can. There's been a continuing process of southern invasion from Pandemic Legion and Northern Coalition through Providence, as they've slowly chewed through bits of Providence and taken that space, and now they're finally coming to our borders. And that has led to this kind of eventuality that there would be skirmishes once PL and NC came in range of our capital forces, such that we would be actually able to defend ourselves in a way where we were not going to be stretching ourselves, multiple mids from our home to try and defend Providence systems. So now that we're in a situation where they're close, we're in a situation where these kind of conflict fights are going to take place at least somewhat regularly. And we had the fight in DTAC G in Providence, which is one jump from catch, happened this week, where PL had been using an Athanor to bridge into our staging system, and we obviously had attacked that Athanor, and this fight in DTAC G was the result of that, where we went to kill the Athanor, and Pandemic Legion dread bombed us effectively. And we were in a prepared capital position, and it went pretty well for us. We lost one Titan, but killed just under 300 dreadnoughts in return, which is the kind of trade we would take any day, or most alliances would anyways. And it was a pretty big win for our capital pilots. And we're certainly by no means upset about the outcome overall. And then, on the other side, we have Immensea, which is kind of our eastern border, where we've been slowly pushing out Red Menace Coalition forces and been inserting, some of, the refugees, I guess you could call them, maybe from Providence, or certainly some of the more competent groups from Providence that decided they wanted to try something different with us. And it seems the fraternity has now decided that they will attack Immensea, probably pushed on by Northern Coalition, which is our assumption, and make a play for that for whatever reason. It seems pretty retarded to us, just being that the time zone issues are going to make it extremely difficult for either side to really make any progress aside from alarm clock opportunities. And obviously we had the first of those alarm clock opportunities happen this, was it Friday? Which was Good Friday, which was, when they had anchored a Fortizar in our space, the first jump into our space from the border with them. At which point, we had multiple sub-capital fleets engage theirs. They attempted to use capitals, which we promptly shit on, and it was a pretty rough fight for them, where we killed approximately 230 regular capitals for losing 30 of our own. Yeah, so it's been a busy week for us, to say the least, moving back and forth.
Well, I mean, how are you liking this? Because this is kind of what you guys set out to do, is to show that you could play on the same level of super cap, dominance, and you guys seem to have come out on top against really like the biggest players in the game.
Yes and no. Obviously, the super cap dominance tree right now is pretty apparent. You've got Goons or Imperium at 1 or 2, and you've got Panfam at either 1 or 2, depending on the defensive or offensive posture and positioning and location of the fight, right? And those two entities are both incredibly strong when it comes to Titans and Supers and Capital Forces. And we're not talking like, and we're somewhere a distant third, right? But the difference between 1 and 2 and that third, which is now us, I guess, is so incredible. Like, it's like we're on like this little hill and they're on like a mountain, like 2 kilometers away, kind of thing. In 9-Tech 4, both of those sides were fielding, upwards of 250 Titans, and we're pushing just, 50 for these timers where we're getting fights and kills, right? So obviously we're not in that level of super cap dominance that they are, but we're making plays, and we're showing that we have, with what we have, the ability to push back anything aside from that super capital level force, which is certainly a really strong ability to show, or it shows to other people that we're more than capable of defending our space.
Yeah, that's first of all, it seemed kind of early that you guys were able to survive using, you're not afraid to escalate to super capitals and stuff. But now that Phoebe changes, basically the jump change has been reduced by what, 90%, 95%. Does it make you a little more nervous to bring out super caps to defend your stuff, to escalate to that level?
No, quite the opposite. Actually, it makes it easier. Because it means that we can reinforce our faxes or dreadnoughts or carriers that much easier. There's no, if we lose a fax, the guy can be back in the fight in 2 minutes, and 5 minutes the next time, and 15 because of red timer, right?
Yeah.
But where previously, generally, we had a fight in one Lima attack in Wicked Creek with Fraternity about a month ago, where we killed 200 or 300 bill, nothing crazy. But we had been reinforcing capitals in that fight, and we literally came to the point where a lot of the guys that had jumped back in just once were unable to jump back out. We literally had to have a subcap take their capital out of system for them. So in that regard, the jump changes have been really helpful, and we're not particularly worried about Pandemic Legion or NC Dot or Goons sneaking a super cap fleet, into catch and grabbing us. Right? It's very obvious when groups move large amounts of supers. Your stagings are well scouted. Nobody's going to be able to, especially from the north where it's almost 12 jumps, I think, through low sec to get to the south. You're not going to be able to do that in the course of a fight. So we're always going to see it coming. And if, PanFam decided that they were going to move their super cap fleet down, then Imperium would probably counter, or vice versa, right? It's a extremely weird kind of triangle where there's two really strong legs, and then there's the third leg, which is us, which is kind of in a very different place right now.
Yeah. So the worries that reducing the Phoebe jump changes too far was going to create the problem that was in EVE before, where people could cross the universe to fight every fight. That doesn't look like it's going to happen, at least now.
Well, yeah, you also have to remember back then, I think the jump ranges were a little different as well. If I recall, was it still in the...
Yeah.
I can't remember, but
yeah.
I certainly remember
like
extremely well how quickly a capital fleet could move from one side of the galaxy to the other. One of my probably the worst capital loss I ever took as a capital commander, back in 2011 maybe, was losing a bunch of dreadnoughts to PL because I miscalculated that they could do 4 jumps in 5 minutes instead of 3 jumps in 5 minutes or something. Right? It's
God.
It's extremely different now, just because you build up that red fatigue very quickly, and then it's 5 minutes to 15 to 30 minutes per jump. And the difference between the north and like a central low sec staging is pretty different as well.
Very wild. Well, cool. Thanks a lot for bringing us up to speed on that. What do you think is going to happen next?
I would guess Pandemic Legion forces in Providence will continue to make plays along our northern border. My guess is we might lose a little Sov, just because of jump ranges, but they'll probably make another attempt to do what they did in D-G and think that they, can refine their strategy and be more successful next time. I don't think that will work for them, just because as much as, they made plenty of mistakes, we made some too, and I think they will find that if they attempt that again, things will go even worse. But my guess is they'll try again anyways. My assumption is the war with Fraternity will end extremely poorly for Fraternity. The Chinese coalition and the Alliance and their FCs are absolutely terrible in terms of like TQ level everything. Their doctrines are bad. Their FCs are bad. They just don't understand how to properly play around the meta that's developed in Tranquility, and they're so far behind. It makes it really hard for them to keep up with like. I don't want to choose our own corn because Test is by no means the beacon of greatness here, but Test is constantly under the gun and under pressure, right? So we're usually pretty far, near the front of the meta kind of thing, and understanding what we need to do to win fights and so on and so forth. And Fraternity is still, a year behind what everybody else seems to be doing. And certainly their FCs are not strong. So my guess is that will not go well for them.
They're trained differently, we hear. They're trained for fair fights up front.
Yeah, it's literally become a meme in on our forums. We're crushing the Olympic athletes.
Is that from the last show where you had that Wind Spirit?
Yes, like literally that's become a meme on the Olympic athletes. Like we fired a bomb ram at like in the fight in QE TAC this 2 days ago. We had a multi-vector bomb run on them as they bridged in, and all they had to do was dock. Like there's a whole bunch of Tempests on a Fortizar. All they have to do is dock. Instead, they decide to anchor up, eat all the bombs, and die. All they had to do is press dock. This is the Olympic athlete FC we're dealing with.
All right, maybe miscommunication now that their localization has been banned.
Jesus, I like listen. They think they're gonna fight test and it's gonna be an opportunity for their alliance to grow. But literally, all it's gonna happen is they're gonna run into a fucking steel wall, and I'm gonna pound them into the fucking ground. I've got no time for these people.
All right. Well, Billy, thanks a lot for bringing us up to speed. I'm glad that things are going well for you, and it seems like morale in your alliance is really high. So it's going to be very interesting to see how a fraternity can make any inroads, if they can, even with the help of NC and PL down there in the catch area.
Cheers.
All right. So the next thing we want to move to is the NETC chain of Keepstars and Fortizars. And so we want to introduce Fafer again. How's it going, Fafer?
Hi there. Hello.
And we also want to introduce Max Singularity.
Hey there, hi there, and hello, Fafer.
Now, why are you two guys here to talk about this jointly? So let's start with Fafer. What's going on with NETC, and how is it that you're coming into possession of that chain of Keepstars and Fortizars?
It's a kind of long story. As most people can recall, the NETC was a gigantic project, a philanthropic project to create a trade and travel network around the New Eden. And it was post-World War B world, and the first ring of Keepstars and adjoining connecting Fortizars was created mostly in the northern part and the central part of the New Eden, until it reaches some sort of demarcation line where the Goon's influence starts to be stronger. And one of the major backer of this and financier of this project was Lenny. But we have a lot more people. Basically, all of the important people came into this project to create something, some sort of civilization of New Eden for various reasons, either for business or philanthropy. I came a bit later. Post-World War B, I was looking for something, a project for me and my corporation to do, because NC was, let's say, settling in the north, and there is nothing, that can hurt them now, and me leaving at that point would not be during the war. And I managed to get into contact with a guy called C4. He's
C4,
also, yeah. And we devised a project plan, and so Ghost Legion was created to hold Myla Keepstar, a part, segment of the network. And we took care about the network, mostly to coordinate the defense and to fuel the things and to keep the things running. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm here.
Okay. So basically, you had this trade network that was built by the guy that financed the World War B or the Casino War. And it was basically friendly towards the northern powers, but not friendly towards, say, the Imperium powers. And so this trade network was set up to go from north to south and to kind of go all over Eve. The original concept was to give people commercial hubs that they could import supplies to. I think this is the way I understand it, and it would just be a trade network where you could help, regions have their own little JITA hub and stuff, so you could get local supplies rather than going all the way into downtown Eve Online to get supplies out of JITA. But that the guy, the financier, was banned for gambling associations, and that weakened it. But it still stuck around because they had Kriba Kriba's name as a guarantor that he was the owner and it wouldn't, nothing nefarious would happen, et cetera, et cetera. But Kriba is leaving the scene, right? Did we discuss why he's leaving?
Yes, well, it's the entropy. A lot has changed. It's not easy to fuel and maintain such large organization. It's across different regions, and now we have these changes in the mechanics. First change was that Fortizar needs to be fueled to not be in the low power state, and it's very difficult to organize any defense in 3 days if the region is across the universe. It's really try-harding. And the next change is that there is a tethering change where you can jump on Fortizar, but you don't get the tether anymore. You need to wait a period of time, and as such, travel is not safe anymore. Most people don't know the old ways of traveling with supers, and as such, you cannot guarantee the safety anymore. So traveling is off limits. Trade never took off. These keepstars were meant to be some sort of trade hubs, but it didn't took. So we can see that let's say these main goals of NETC, the trade and travel, are no longer fulfilled. And then the logical decision was made to decommission the New Eden Trading Company.
Right. So is Kriba even around? Like, I mean, I know people like to use his name to guarantee fairness, but that was a different time. That was when you needed somebody that could be trusted to hold money in a transaction, a big money. But now you have these keepstars where you can basically put it on contracts. The biggest things in the game, the Titans and the, I always go back to motherships. I don't know why, but the super carriers. So you really don't need a third party anymore to exchange really, really valuable items like that.
Kriba is a great guy, but he has also real life obligations, so he is now sporadically around. And yes, these keepstars and the super cap contracts in the keepstars killed all the third parties in the New Eden. There are simply no more third parties doing anything because everybody can dock into Keepstar and make a contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's in Beskrin, the Pope Star, which was Mercenary Coalition, was gifted to the Sixth Empire. And one of the things we did when we got the Keepstar right away is we opened it up to everybody. So before it was maybe Northern Coalition and the NETC network friendly, but my goal for Baskrin is to be a city state, and we can talk about what that means. But now everybody can dock there, Northern Coalition and Imperium. Matter of fact, I would love to see hostile forces dock there. In a way, when I was talking over with Celine and Mercenary Coalition, I kind of want Baskrin to be the Babylon 5 of New Eden. You know, if there's a few people who don't know what Babylon 5 is, but for those who do, that's kind of my vision for it. Hopefully with a good ending, not the same ending.
What was Babylon 5? Is that a diplomatic safe zone or something?
Yeah, it was a television series. It was a science fiction series. I'm going to date myself. I think 80s or so, 90s maybe. And it was an Earth giant space station, a really huge station like a Keepstar. And it was in the far reaches of space, and hostile factions and races would recognize that Babylon 5 was a diplomatic outpost. So it's not the United Nations, because they weren't united at all, but it was kind of a safe space to park your spacecraft. There were bars. You could go gambling, whatever, and there was trade. There was trade going on. But most importantly, it was a place where many of the hostile warring parties could have an open talking zone. It's kind of like the white building between North Korea and South Korea, kind of like that diplomatic space. And so we've opened it up to everybody except some of the high-sec gankers, that's like...
Because you have to have standards.
Right, we have some standards, So there's only like three groups that don't have docking access, but everybody does. Even enemies of us, enemies of the Sixth Empire, if there are any. People war deck us all the time, and yeah, they can come dock there. Come on by.
Yeah, thanks. Esco tells us Babylon 5 is a TV series filmed between 1993 and 2007.
There we go. Yeah, and it's got a big fan base. It's I'm a fan of it. Of good old Londo Mollari, and
Well, I think wasn't the Scion, when he was the chief diplomat of Goon Swarm, had a Babylon channel, and that was where a lot of diplomats were able to come and discuss terms and stuff.
Yeah, I would believe it. Matter of fact, Pfeiffer, also of House Kador during the Amar Championships, he was my enemy. Because I was fighting for House Kador, he was fighting for House Kador, and he defeated my team. So here are two enemies in game, and here we are cooperating on this idea that we still want to make this city-state type concept work.
Wasn't it a Jabber server at one point called Jabberlon 5?
That was it, Jabberlon 5. Yeah, but obviously it's based after.
Yeah, Babylon 5 is a station in the TV show, and Jabberlon 5 was named after that station.
Yeah,
the station was serving as some sort of diplomatic staging for everybody, for all the races.
Yeah, and the real world equivalent, the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church, is worldwide. So they're in all hostile states, that are fighting each other, and so it's kind of the same thing. Where that is the Vatican. You can often find me there. I'm in Null or I'm in that low-sec, and it's kind of a really cool low-sec area. One of the things we want to do is create what's called a white fleet, or white hat fleet. And right. The white hat fleet is a combat fleet that is kind of like on a Coast Guard patrol. They will fly through the low-sec area, and we'll use mining ships as bait. So we have a couple of moon mining facilities, and we're publicly blowing up moons and allowing the public, I mean anybody, to come harvest these moon minerals. So get out of high-sec, come to low-sec, get on these moon materials, and then a hostile comes in, and you might lose one retriever, but every sudden the white hat fleet uncloaks and boom, blaps everybody else. So be kind of fun activity.
That sounds pretty good. So that's in the center of your Keep Star is actually in the center of the cluster, right?
It is. The Basegrin is the one low-sec system that is pretty much the center of the whole cluster of all the high-sec. So it's like right near Amar, right near it is in Galenti space, but it's close to the Minmatar. It's close to Caldari. It's smack dab in the middle, and it was done on purpose there before Mercenary Coalition built it. And so it's a good stopping point for people traveling, from the north to the south, or the south to the north, or the east to the west. It's a good stopping point for friendly and hostile forces. And it's kind of the southern anchor of the NETC network, before it officially disbanded. But the idea of the city-state, we're still looking at.
Right. Well, that sounds great. Also, I like the idea of white hats, because that's that reminds me of the guys in Syria that basically run into, bombing zones and grab survivors to save them and stuff. So it's like super courageous. It's a sign of super courageous people.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point. We're the white hats also in the Old West. You had the black hats who were the bad guys in the 1950s westerns, and then you had the white hats, which were upholding law and order in a lawless area. So we are in LoSec, which of course is a partially lawless area, and we can launch this white hat fleet and go out and just blap bad guys for fun.
Awesome.
I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong, it's still PvP and we're still doing all the things PvP, but we're just role playing the good guys, protecting the miners.
Untying the damsels from the train tracks. I get it.
Exactly. Yeah, because you get the damsels that way. So
right. So Favor, this is like this is going to be a big responsibility. How are you going to manage to take these take all this on with and still lead a coalition of with DRF and everything?
Yeah, I suppose easily. But
you also run a big renting empire, and you're a busy man.
Yeah, things are going on. So, regarding this, city-states, Max has mentioned something interesting, and that is that Basgerin is in the middle of New Eden. Aunen and Mile are not. They are on the border of the nullsec, of the PenFem nullsec, and they have different diplomatic agreements with PenFem than Basgerin. So in them, I cannot allow anybody hostile to PenFem to stage, because who would tolerate such danger on their borders? And therefore, this, let's say, city-state concept is more descriptive, because there is not now one entity, but there are city-states, and each city-state can have their own diplomatic agreement with their environment. So Aunen and Maila will continue to be limited free ports. I will call them more like sanctuaries, because some people are triggered because they think that calling free port or limited free port is misleading. So anyone who is not on the block list can freely dock into sanctuary and perform their trade or whatever, or park their Titan and sleep. And if you're on the blocked entities, then you can drop to an NPC Corp or move to another entity, and then you can dock. So it is still kind of free, but it is limited freedom. And that is that we cannot allow hostile entities to stage or use these keepstars either tactically or strategically.
Well, so whereas Babylon 5 example of Max's Keepstar is anyone can park there except a few gankers. In the north, it's different. Only anybody can park there except Imperium. Is that right?
I did not hear you. Can you repeat?
Who is it that cannot park or use the stations in the north and east?
Well, from the start, it was Imperium. Imperium was never able to be docked into Aunen or Maila. And I remember, for example, Project Mayhem killing a Vanquisher from Ghost Agent, but I did not revoke their access rights. But now that they are in Snuff, and Snuff is member of Imperium, then Snuff cannot dock in Aunen or Maila. But if they want to trade or store their super, they can drop their organization, and I'm not having NPC corporations on block list. That's not feasible, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say that this sanctuary is provided to everybody. Except, of course, if it is particularly pesky individual, then I will block him too. But I don't think that there will be many such retarded people.
Is Ghost Legion in charge of defense, or do you have because you're a very well-known diplomat, so you can call friends if you need to. Like, how are you going to defend these things if that's something you can reveal?
I can call friends, DRF or members of PenFem, and they will help as this, let's say, agreement is transitional. So right now I have this Aunen and Myla, and there are agreements in place regarding that.
All right, so these things are turning into sanctuaries, and so this whole like effort is no longer focused on trade, although that might be a part of it. It's more focused on keeping these things as places that people can use publicly instead of just privately held keep stars. And they are sprinkled in low sec, which allows access from multiple groups in high sec and low sec, but also null. They also clearly are long-term storage for supercat pilots that are going to go unaffiliated, so they can park their supers there while they take a few months off in case their group loses space or something.
Yeah, that's kind of what I had in mind. You know, the Sixth Empire, we kind of have these Coast Guard ethos and symbols on it, and so the Pope is kind of providing this Coast Guard service, which is kind of neutral to hostile parties or cooperating to hostile parties. You know, people can join the Sixth Empire and try out our play style, and then they can join PanFam or they can join the Imperium. They can go different directions. We're fine with that. And so what we're trying to do is create literally a safe harbor, you know, a harbor that you can park your ships. We've literally had people from Imperium cross the wall and join other forces. And you know, they've moved their ships out, and the other way too. We've had people from hostile forces join Imperium and come back. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how that all works.
It's a crossroads.
Yeah, and so it's kind of cool that, you know, that I'm sitting at Baskrin, you know, in the chair, and I'm watching all these reds come in, undock and dock, and you know, if they fight each other in the system, I'm okay with that. That's fine. But they usually just jump out real quick before they engage.
It might be time to revisit NRDS, which is not red, don't shoot, which is kind of a method of thinking in pirate space that's controlled purely by players, of allowing people to visit and to explore and even to harvest the area without being killed by the locals. And the idea is to have a police force that kind of kills people who hunt the people who are kind of just exploring and grazing in the area. But that was Providence, and that kind of got knocked out by NC. With PL recently. I'm a little biased because I'm an NC. But is there like a way to revisit and merge the concepts of city-states and NRDS?
I've lived in Providence. Max did we were in part of the entry system there, and the NRDS, the way it was put out, was very corruptible, and it was very arbitrary and subjective. And so I don't like how the taste of the NRDS was administered. We're now practicing with the White Hat fleet, if yellow, shoot it, and if red, shoot it. You know, so that way it's a little bit, if you commit a crime, we're going to shoot you. So we're kind of like a baby Concorde, you know, of the Coast Guards. So as long as you fly into a belt, you fly in with an Armageddon, and there's a bunch of miners, and you're a neutral, nobody does anything. But the minute you shoot something, then this mysterious White Hat fleet uncloaks and blaps you away.
Okay, so that sounds super interesting. Is there going to be plans for more Keep Stars being dropped?
Not from me. Maybe Fafer.
I don't have immediate plans, but I hope that maybe other people will join this city-state concept. It would probably be nice that Imperium feels something like that in their proximity of their lowsec, so that people can store titans or supers there also, right? So who will travel to Badger in, multiple regions or to reach Myla? It's very hard to travel through lowsec. So I think that this is good for everybody. It's a service to everybody, and it's philanthropic, and it's not so cheap sport to have these keepstars.
Yeah.
So it's more of a something like a humanitarian statement, and we shall see. I would expect that there will be something in the south or east, but I cannot talk about it yet.
So there will. So this has nothing to do with NETC. You're just basically inheriting their old structures, and this has you are not in contact with Lenny. Are you, or is this a?
No, Lenny is
the way of changing the image.
He's not playing at all. He's banned, and I just inherited this, and we kind of held the door for like a year and a half, I think. And right now, these changes, they killed our connecting fortizers. It's completely unviable to have them, and these three keepstars will remain for now.
Well, the fortizars were a problem because they could easily be counterfeited, and by that I mean somebody could say. Somebody could put a fortizar up, name it the same way, pretty much. Make a corporation that looked like the corporation that was for a free port, and basically trap people like myself and other people who have gotten into. I didn't fall into the trap because, well, I won't go into it. But the point is, you could trap people that were thinking they're parking at a safe port, and they weren't. They were in a trap.
Yeah, we are calling that fake fortizers. Basically, either somebody wrecks your fort and then puts their own fort with the corporation with the same logo and similar name, and then people jump on that and get killed. Or they just put another fortizar in the same system, and then people jump on it and get killed. We tried to make our presentation slides in the MOTD of holding corporations to tell people which fortizars are secured, but it seems it had limited results. I think, pioneers of that are Ivana Trading Federation guys in Heimatar. They killed Wustendal Fortizar, and they put their fake Fortizar there, and they killed a shitload of ships on it.
Wow.
And I went there with the blob of contacts and contractors, and we killed their fort and restored the link, but it's completely unviable now to maintain this. What is it's ISK sync, and who can do this? Like you have 3 days to do it.
In our case, because CCP has the recognizable logos in our alliance of the POPAT, so it's kind of hard to counterfeit that. So when you see that logo flying over a Keepstar or a Fortizar, you're guaranteed that it's a Sixth Empire product. So there you go.
That's a little more distinctive, and they can't really copy. They can't counterfeit that into the game, can they?
No, they can't counterfeit that because it's it has to be approved by CCP first, and then it has to be the alliance, and they regulate that. So when you see that POPAT flying, now our corporation's different. We have different corporations, so that's the Gold Angels. But it doesn't matter what corporation it is, but as long as that alliance logo's on there, then you can't counterfeit it.
Okay, but it seems to me like the best way to deal with the problem is to say there are no safe Fortizars. There are no safe Freeport Fortizars. That's only Keepstars in this city-state sanctuary group.
Right now, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's hard to put the fake Keepstar, right?
That's going to be a much bigger commitment. And if you have friends that can either prevent a keep star from being put up in the first place, I think you can actually regulate that. And I'm super curious about this, as I've talked with Pfeiffer in the past, that this is something that I might want to get involved with too, and in some way to throw in whatever help I can do, wealth and publicity wise, to build up these sanctuaries, and connect them, because I would love to see all roads go through Rome, or I should say the Vatican, east, south, west.
Kind of New Eden's version of Sim City. We have no idea how this is going to come out or what shape it'll take,
Yeah.
but it started. We've got the first roads down. So starting from the center, we have a road north, and so yeah, I'd like to see a road to the southeast, like you said, into Imperium, and it's up to those city states. It's up to the Imperium to figure out, well, is this useful? Is it something that works for them? And then branch out. It'd be the East. Oh my God, the East is a frickin' desert of New Eden. There is nothing out there. Whoever wants to live in Imensia, it's just, God, it's like barren, unused space. So if there was a road extending out there, it might make it viable. But God, that place is desolate.
It's one of my favorite regions.
Imensia is pretty good space, actually.
Really, you might say that different, right? They're fighting over it.
I know. I still have an Asbel stuck in UTAC-U out there. So
yeah. It's all right. Yeah. So I don't know. This concept is interesting, and it seems to be very generous, because you guys aren't really getting anything out of it. It's not like you're making money off this thing. It's not some kind of trade plan that will invest into the future and that sort of stuff. You guys are really just going out of pocket to provide these spaces.
Yeah, that's for Baskrin. That is, I mean, whatever little income comes in from trade, it goes right back into the fuel. And so right now we're just breaking even, and because you have to fuel those things, and they suck down quite a bit of fuel. So so there's we're not a take charge alliance. I mean, we have to have a business plan where we don't go down. So there's got to be a business plan where at least allows us to stay normal. And if we make just a hair amount of money, that's fine, because we'll invest it somehow in buying new infrastructure and buying new stuff to try to put that back into the public use, like the moon mining stations, like building an Asbel, or something like that. Mm-hmm. But then again, then that requires fuel. So the whole purpose of a nonprofit is you can make money, but the expenses have to equal the outflow. That's why it's nonprofit. And so that's how I'm kind of looking at it, that, it's what if taxes of a Wild West town actually went to services of the Wild West town, not into profits.
Yeah, for example, we have an industry park in Vaila, a free industry park where people can build stuff. And the fees from there and occasional supercap contract sales tax, it's enough to cover the fuel, but it still needs to catch up with the initial investment of the industry park. And I hope that we can do something like that in Aunenen. So my goal is to make it a standalone, or maybe there will be more super sales soon. It used to be a lot of money, relatively a lot of money in the past from these super cap sale contracts, but now they are more seldom. I suppose there are now a lot of non-sec keep stars, and such trades are done there. So we shall see. But
and another aspect of this too is it's kind of a cool stepping stone from the high-sec Care Bear industry to make a leap into a whole different game that they're not even unaware of. Building things in low sec and building things in null sec. It's not the same. So there's the mining, there's the access to the facilities. and hopefully with the White Hat fleet, they'll take that leap, because I remember many new players are like, no, I have to skill up before I go to LoSec. Screw it, just go to LoSec. And what's cool about Basgren is it only has one gate. So your highest risk point is entering the gate. Then you align and get to a Keepstar. And, doing that is relatively safe, because then you go from Keepstar to Keepstar and line up in their tethers, and you tether up right away. So it's actually safer than undocking from JITA.
Yeah, it's kind of dangerous, because everybody knows a lot of money coming in and out of JITA, so they're just going to stake it out. But so you're going to have industry kind of help pay for it, but also have a White Hat fleet that will, be an opportunity for people to have some fun, just running after criminals and stuff like that. And the other thing that Favor said that's interesting, and this is probably why Imperium doesn't want Keepstars near them that aren't theirs, is they have a policy of not letting builders sell super capitals to anybody but themselves. They keep it inside. And any kind of a neutral Keepstar would make that impossible to govern or to check. So they probably wouldn't want any kind of a ability to trade supers near them.
Yeah, you have to figure out the model of how it works, and so yeah, it's not foolproof. I mean, there's some flaws with the city-state idea, but the idea is, let's put out the infrastructure, see what it does, and then try to find some creative solutions for the community as a whole. But it may not apply to every alliance.
But you have a lot of friends. People respect you very much. Pfeiffer has a lot of friends. People respect him and Ghost Legion and his connections. So you guys seem poised to do it. I am looking into getting involved with this as well. I have a lot of friends. Don't know if I'm well respected, but it would be neat to see more of these kinds of places come forward, where these city states and sanctuaries could kind of create little oases in a desert of meanness. Well, actually, that's a wrong way to put it, because people are going to destroy them now.
That's actually a good way to put it, because even in any Wild West town, the Black Hats would ride in and say, "This is our town now." And, in some cases they would win. And in other cases, all the people came out of their ranches in the village and helped defend the town. So somebody called it a ticker tank. When they see the Popat logo, they go, okay, that's your ticker tank.
Don't touch that one.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's the case, but, that's like Kriba. When anybody went, to war against Kriba, he was ticker tank. So it's a thing.
I am certainly not ticker tanked, especially when I jump to Fortizars, because I will get killed. But somebody does say here, the Dark Clouds guy says, as a new player, how can I read and about joining?
If you go to sixth, SIXTH empire.org, there is some articles on the Basgren system. I have not done any outreach materials for the NETC network, but there is some basic information about Basgren on the sixthempire.org website.
Well, I like this. In fact, what I think I'm going to do, we have a little sponsorship sign. As you can see down there, it says now on Spotify, which I should say Talking in Stations now on Spotify, so you can check it out there. Every episode will be up.
And that's not an April Fool's joke, by the way.
That is not an April Fool's joke. Yeah, everything we're telling you is real. But but I would love to get involved with this, because I've been trying to find something that I can put back into the EVE community inside the game, without bringing too much attention to the show and stuff like that. So not really leveraging the show into it. But what I will do is fundraise on this show. And that little now in Spotify section is our new ad section. So if you want to sponsor an episode, we're going to make arrangements for that. And so you can pay an ISK, and we will talk about your corporation, and what that money will go to is building some of these sanctuary Keepstars. and stuff. It's a long haul. It's not going to happen fast, but if you do one every 3 months or so, eventually it'll get built. I don't know what the pace is. And I'm going to donate all my personal wealth for this too. I'm going to sell everything I have that's, laying around. And that's about 10 years of wealth building.
We've had some players that have said they were about ready to quit EVE, and they said, "Oh, this is my game now," and so it's like a whole new game.
Yeah, and that's what happened with Signal Cartel. Minxie was a low-sec pirate, pretty well known. She's done a lot before she took a break from EVE. When she came back, she's like, you know what? I love this game, but I'm tired of what I did before. I'm going to do something else. And she built up Signal Cartel with some people. And we'll have them on next Sunday, talk about Signal Cartel and their efforts. It's a ton of donated time and effort they do. So yeah, so let's get to this and build something that allows people to stay with EVE, because there's some content for them to do, some interesting stuff, and some places to store their stuff if they take off for a while and all that kind of stuff. Cool. Thank you guys for talking about that. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we go on this topic?
Well, there will be soon a press release about these changes where everything will be explained in more details. And I wish to thank everybody for listening and thank you for hosting us.
Sure. Like I said, I was contemplating it, but now I'm actually throwing in. I want to help with you guys. I want to help any way I can with this effort. So that's going to be a big focus of my game now. All right.
Hey, welcome aboard. Glad to have you.
I've been converted. And it feels great. All right. Now, Villy, you're not going to destroy these if we put them down, will you?
Where?
I don't know, to be determined, but probably out of range of your supers.
Well, like Legacy plus Imperium, there's not really, how do you put this? Options for us to allow neutral, Fortizars, in range.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the nullsec point of view of these things. These things probably are things you don't want near you unless you have some kind of plan with them, I suppose.
Yeah, so I was pretty much the organizer of destroying the Jaina-led Keepstar, for the New Eden Trade Network, that when that one went down near us. Because at that point, C4W3 was still the main organizer of things at that point, and like he's in PL. Like I know the whole network is literally designed for a network to get PL down south whenever they want to go, kind of thing. I'm not cool with that, right? So that's why we toasted it, or we destroyed it the first time. And the Imperium I keep saying toasted, destroyed pretty much every component of the network that was near them for 2 mids, maybe more, towards them. So people just can't allow hostile networks to give free access to their space, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of like deploying missiles in Cuba.
Yeah, it's not a horrible analogy.
I totally agree. If it doesn't deny the content for your own guys, if it creates content, it's not the kind of content you want, right? Because then
in the 2 years test has been in catch, we have never been short content.
All right, so I understand that using it for PL to travel near you and stuff like that is a bad thing.
Yeah, but the PL doesn't need the NETC. They have their own Retarus and Fortizars.
Although it's a little harder for them now because their super capital fleet doesn't have much safety with the tethering delays and stuff like that. Well, if they travel together, they're pretty safe, but.
Yeah, I mean, if they would travel in the supercap blob, there isn't much that would interfere with that.
Right, but stragglers might have a harder time catching up and stuff like that. But this network might make it easier for them to catch up. But that seems to be a rare case. But who knows? Villy, though, you would trust You would trust Pfeiffer. You would trust the Pope, wouldn't you?
No.
I'm starting trouble now.
Well, and honestly, I wouldn't be dumb enough to deploy near the Imperium with an open access process or close to NC-Doc. I mean, Baskrin is in the middle of Eve. There, it's kind of it's equidistant to everybody. So it's, what threat is it? But to go deeper, to use the Cuba analogy, I'm not dumb enough to go to Cuba and deploy missiles there and do that. So that's not a case where the city-state network is viable. It's like setting up missiles in Tijuana or on the Golan Heights or something. That doesn't make sense. That ain't what this is about.
Yeah. So it's a non-starter. You wouldn't even build near places that would feel threatened by it.
Only if you want to get blown up. and then you're rightfully blown up because that's dumb to deploy deep within into these areas and threaten them. That's not the idea of the city-state.
Right. All right, cool. All right, so next, Pothny, come alive. Are you there?
I'm here.
All right. Let's talk doctrines with Pando and Vili. If you want to jump in too, you can. But Pando, can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, short.
Sorry, I should probably do it. That's rude, right? But tell me the stuff that's hard to know, like when you started the game, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, the short version would just be like I've been FCing for quite a while, and by now I'm just responsible for the weird stuff coming from in it, like the Ravens and like Snatch a while ago and the smart bombing T3s and stuff like this. So I see myself like the
okay. Well, let's start with a basic thing though that I didn't do, and that was to say that you're from the Initiative and you're an FC for the Initiative. And just tell me, how long have you been with the Initiative?
Oh, how long has it been? I think 7, 8 years it must be, kind of.
Oh wow!
I'm not even sure how long it has been. Has been quite a while, and over the time, like I didn't start FCing there, so I just grew into that role, and
Were you in the campaign to take AAA space in 2010?
Oh yes, that's actually when I joined.
Yeah.
On day one, I joined. Actually, a friend of mine got me back into the game. Said, "Hey, and it's a cool kind of group, and want to join." So on day one of that campaign, I actually joined. Yeah.
Wow. So we were flying together in the same fleets then, because I was part of that with Dead Terrace. Awesome.
Oh yeah.
So you're known by many that I've talked to as a very, very good doctrine. Like you've come up with great doctrines that are new and inventive and stuff like that. You really kind of perfected the Snatch fleet that actually made Initiative kind of feared by all groups because they knew how you could take a fight and make it go sideways. Just by interrupting the way their fleet was working and stuff like that. Do you want to tell us like why you got interested in doctrines? Before we go into the doctrines, can you tell us like why you got interested in this kind of job or work?
Well, I don't know. Well, maybe I shouldn't have said I'm an FC because I think first of all I'm an EFT warrior. So like 90% of my time is an EFT, like playing around with doctrines. Like most
EFT
of them.
For players that don't know, sorry to interrupt you. For players that don't know, the EFT is a program that you use to create theoretical ship fits, which is how you equip a ship, and then you basically use those combinations to create a doctrine. And the doctrine is how you use the fits in coordination with one another. Because there might be 3 or 4 different types of ships that you use for a certain fleet doctrine, and all those have strategy and tactics associated with them. So EFT is a program that you use for that, and that's a program you use a lot, right?
Well, now it's Python, right? Because
Yeah,
everyone had to switch when EFT wasn't really up to date, not reliable. and I actually just lost all my fittings on Python because I fucked up. So,
Oops.
it was a sad day. But yeah, well, most of the fittings I got in my head anyway, so that's fine.
So that's just something that you got interested in.
Well, yeah, well, if you undock as a noob, like on whatever, like week 2 maybe, someone's gonna tell you about EFT and how to fit your ship proper, right? So you just keep going with it, I guess. And I just liked the whole theory part. And I think I actually started FCing just because I couldn't find someone to fly that weird shit, right? It's not that easy to find someone flying, let's say, armor remote rep long range Ravens, Like if you have that in your head and it all works in your head, it's fine, right? But like, who's gonna field like 100 of these and look like an idiot if they all get blown up by, let's say, smart bomb carriers, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that's why,
Let me bring Vili. Sorry. Go ahead, Apotny.
Well, I was just going to ask Pando and also Vili, in my very limited experience, neither being this FC or Theorycraft or either of your caliber, new doctrines tend to come from one of two places, and new fits as well tend to come from one of two places. Either A, you have just been inspired, oh, this ship has just had a balance change, or oh, there's this new module, or oh, I've just seen some other guys do a similar thing, and you're kind of like working off of inspiration and wanting to try something new, and then seeing where you can apply that in what you're flying and what you're doing in game. And then the second place they come from is kind of like the reverse method. So you have a specific need. Like, I need a doctrine that is good at bashing structures and also doesn't lose to T3A hacks. Some
Exactly.
vague description of that. In both of your minds, which two of those do you guys tend to gravitate towards? Do you have a preference? Do you just do both as and when? Kind of like, what, generally speaking, before we even go into the specific doctrines we might want to talk about, what is your preferred approach, and how do you find yourself falling into doctrine creation?
Well, for me, it's definitely the number 2, right? I mean, the Ravens, exactly, like it's just for the situation. And I think you were actually on the podcast before talking about the Ravens, and you didn't quite understand why would you pick Ravens, right? But there's a clear reason, right? It's the DPS that comes out of the numbers we have. Like if we had double the numbers, I think I would have picked the Rocks because it's just easier to go with instant damage. But Rocks just got half the DPS. If you have to kill caps like Faxes and so on, like 50, 60, 70, maybe 100 Rocks, they'll have a hard time. While Ravens, actually, they can murder Faxes, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. If you're loading Rage, because obviously they have a signature the size of a sun.
Yeah, it's always the situation first, right? And then, what can you do?
And then how do you tend to find yourself kind of in different situations? So obviously the initiative is kind of broadly under the general Imperium umbrella, but you might even be in the same space trying to achieve the same job because you have slightly different numbers. You might have slightly different skill points available in your pilots. You may be coming up with a separate doctrine for almost exactly the same purpose. Have you found kind of in your interaction kind of in alliance versus in coalition versus when you're deployed doing different stuff, kind of how do you keep track of how many doctrines you expect people to have while still having that variety for different things? And also this is a case of different alliances having different pilot structures. By which I mean, if you look at kind of like a legacy or a GOTG or a Imperium or kind of like a traditional EVE coalition, in the sense that you're going to have a lot of younger to middle-aged players, and kind of you have this pyramid going all the way to the top of the people who have tons of caps and stuff, versus kind of the PLNC of you get in when you can already fly a cap, so everyone kind of is in the super capital zone there, which obviously adds a weird proportionary dynamic between fighting forces. So kind of like how does initiative fit into that, and how do you design it within those considerations?
Holy shit, what a loaded question.
Loaded? I thought it was quite nice.
Load of, I think.
So, like, first of all, like how we organize, like how we expect our people to be, like, to have all these ships ready. So basically any FC in it can come up with any doctrine, right? And you can post it. If you can pull the numbers, fine, you can do it, right? and he is expected to have the ships, and then we call that a signature doctrine, right? For example, I think the Ravens didn't start as signature, but actually they might have. So, one FC just starts it, pulls it off, and if it's good and if it works, it's getting up to like strategic level. So we use it as strategic stuff, right? So we actually haven't, at the moment, I feel like way too many doctrines going. And people get confused lightly, but skill point wise, like most people can fly everything, so it's on that part we have an easier job there. And sorry, what was the rest of your question?
So the rest of my question was, how do you find designing for different groups? Like before you were in the initiative and designing doctrines for them, were you in another group designing for them? Because I was trying to make a point of
no.
Oh, okay.
Well, for myself, for solo stuff, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't count, I guess.
Well, one of the things I find interesting, and this ties into Pandemic Legion versus Providence, and then Legacy, and kind of general warfare between the PLNCs of the world and the alliances that have a much larger base, is finding doctrines that suit the purpose of your alliance. So I was saying how, for example, Pandemic Legion NC are very loaded with high SP characters, but tend to have smaller overall numbers. So you've got very large super capital force, and then actually not as many subcapitals compared to, say, I'll just bring up Test because Villy's here, who until recently, it might be fair to say that they were very subcapital loaded, but struggled with the super capital and even regular capital numbers. So obviously you're designing both for the group you are in and for the group you are likely to be facing and what their style is. And what general considerations do you have into play when you're designing doctrines within that? Or do you kind of ignore that and just go for the situation versus situation, as we were saying before?
Yeah, I just go for the situation, right? Like, what's the problem at hand, and just see what ship could actually pull it off, or what doctrine, right? It's a pretty simple approach actually, and just EFT as long as you have to find the right ship, I guess. Actually, with the Raven, it wasn't even me bringing it up. It was actually Bliss coming up saying, "Hey, Raven's actually got good DPS." So that's how it's getting sparked, right? And then we just EFT'd away. And yeah, obviously, I think in it we also have like very high SP in general, right? So I don't have to think about that too much, right?
And then obviously cost as well comes into that, depending on kind of the relative coffers of the average pilot of your alliance. Another thing I want to ask is that a lot of the time EFT meets reality in unexpected ways, in the doctrine doesn't necessarily apply as well as EFT said it should, either because there's some variable forgotten or because the servers are taking a dump, or something like that. So do you have any experience of kind of taking what you've worked out should be good to reality, making things a bit weird, and then having to go back to the drawing board beyond the general theorize, test, theorize, test, theorize, test?
Well, yeah, we have for example, a good example for that is we had like obviously we did Snatch for quite a while, and we introduced Heavy Snatch like shortly after. That was like Blaster Taluses, right? So you've got high DPS, which is great for a lot of situations. But as soon as you find something that's moving at some speed, right? It doesn't even have to be fast, but your application goes down quite a bit, right? And yeah, you would probably trade 50-50 with like Canes and stuff like this, but you have to be super careful. And if you fuck up, obviously these Talos, they're paper thin, and then they die, right? So yeah, in theory, we had some successes with them too, but I basically abandoned them after a while because they just didn't do as well as they should have on paper, right? I mean, if you see at paper like 1,200 DPS, you probably think you're unbeatable with like 100 of these, or let's say 50 of these, right? And you can melt effects or something fairly quickly with it, but you also die super quick, right? And in these MJD fleets, people make mistakes all the time. So
yeah,
you lack the DPS quickly then.
Yeah, like one of my favorite things is what I think some other people consider like the Dominic's Navy fallacy, where in EFT, especially if you're not used to FCing and kind of how fleets interact, the Dominic's Navy has always looked good because you can just get such a big DPS number out of it, but they're kind of garbage in practicality. That's true on Tranquility and in tourney stuff famously as well. So Vili, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how it's been, because obviously you've been a FC for quite a while now. Have you seen the general approach to doctrinal design change over the years in terms of what we've been talking about? How kind of just designing for a situation or somebody being inspired by meta change? Like from your more broad view, how have you seen the approach to designing doctrines change?
Well, I remember when there wasn't doctrines, when you just showed up in battleships, or you just showed up in what you had, and things like range and damage never mattered, right? The slow evolution of doctrines into Eve has been a process in itself that many people forget. From the doctrines being just double Trimarch battleships, with long range guns, was very much the doctrine of choice for many years. That was eventually blown away by Tengu Fleet doctrines, which was eventually challenged by Maelstrom doctrines, which was eventually challenged by Armor Hack doctrines. Which was, doctrines are a general, they're a process of evolution. People say, what do I need to do to beat, person X or group Y? And people look for the answer to that question. And when they find that answer, generally they pick it up and they use it and they beat their enemy. Or sometimes they try to beat their enemy and they still fail, which happens more often than not. But what happens is, then if that becomes successful, then that will become, the new meta, and things will evolve around that. And then, your enemy will come up with what's good against this, or they will adopt that themselves. And then you're trying to figure out what is good against the thing you just developed. Sometimes the meta in terms of doctrines will evolve over the course of weeks, literally weeks. A great example of this was a small little Russian group in Wicked Creek, I think, used 4 sniper Naglfars or something to defend Fortizar. And within the course of 2 weeks, the better part of half of Eve had adopted that component of strategy into their defense against things like bush fleets and other elements, right? So the meta in Eve is incredibly, even if portions of it are incredibly static just because of member line skill. I obviously can't put 200 people in Bargists, let's say, from one day to the next, and then switch them all to rattlesnakes the next day, let's say. But there's always opportunities to change and improve at a very dynamic speed when things are happening.
Awesome, thank you. And then question for both of you. We've had kind of, especially in the last, I don't know, let's say 6 to 9 months, a very big push in the community wanting the more regular balance changes, not just the usual call for we want this specific thing nerfed, or we want this specific thing buffed, or we want this specific module set that was promised. It's been, we want these regular balance changes. Now, from a large alliance doctrine level, obviously having these balance changes can be nice because you get to try new things, you get to do new stuff. But if they are then too regular, they mean that you have to change doctrines, and there's a ton of logistical work that goes into that. And if it's too regular, then you're putting a lot of strain on already one of the hardest roles in the alliance. And then, of course, again, if they stay stagnant for too long, then that can lead to a certain spaceship meta where you potentially can't perform certain tasks because the best ship at that task get dunked by the ship that's designed to counter you doing that task. So doctrine changes open things up and allow you to kind of, whoever theory crafts first and theory crafts best and get their ships on field first has an advantage for however long it takes people to catch up. So in your two opinion, how often do you like to see not necessarily huge overhauls, but just kind of like subtle balance changes that don't necessarily force new doctrines, but allow more to be discovered and kind of force the evolution to take place a little bit faster?
Well, I think it's not too much at the moment. It could be a little bit more, to be honest. Like, we've got a couple of things that need to be balanced, right? So I'm happy to go to EFT and or Python and come up with something, and just, I mean, it's fun for me, right? But I think it can't be much more, right? Because then it's getting too crazy. I remember the command ship changes. Like, there was a lot of work to actually figure out, like, how are we gonna do this? Like, are we going 2-link, 3-link? Like, it's like, then it's not fun anymore, right? If it's like a whole group, like all doctrines need changing, kind of, right? And like, how are you gonna fly it? Can we still fly these doctrines at all, right? Because some doctrines, they relied on off-grid boosts. So yeah.
Do you do your EFT warring for the initiative tournament team as well, or do you stick to Tranquility fleets?
No, I always stayed out of the Alliance tournament stuff. I have huge respect for the guys who put in so much effort in all these like fights there. So, but no, I stay out of that one.
There's a couple things here in chat that I wanted to say, like or highlight. One is comes from CheetX. I understand why doctrines became a thing and involved to setups, but he doesn't like doctrines. He thinks that's the reason behind some of the stagnation in the game. If all the guys have to basically, and the extension of that, if all the guys basically have to get in certain ships, it becomes more expensive to play because you have to buy all the right equipment and you have to skill up all the right levels and all that kind of stuff. You guys agree with that?
Well,
at
your level, you don't worry about that.
Personally, I think if you're bored of flying a certain ship, fly a different role in that fleet. Like, I very rarely fly mainline DPS ships. I like flying dictors or being part of the command team and having ults all over the place and stuff like that. So if you're bored flying your F1 ship, then fly Logi, fly a dictor, fly a scout. There are like 100,000 useful things you can be doing, which I'm sure Villy and Panda will back me up on saying that FCs always need more people doing the more specialized roles.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Making the jump from an F1 ship to a Logi pilot is a big investment of skills.
Well, if you're bored of flying the Ishtar for 2 years, say.
What about that though? Because Villy was saying he remembered before doctrines were a thing, especially in Goonswarm, I suppose, because he had a lot of new players trying the game, just trying to have fun. A less disciplined, smaller team. A more disciplined and smaller team could say, yeah, we insist on doctrines because we have to punch above our weight. But do you think the spontaneity of jumping in and getting involved in a fleet is affected by the heavy, reliance on everybody should be in the same ship doing the same thing?
Yes, it is. But on the other hand, you gain so much that it's not even close on the equation. If you're jumping into once you get past like 30, 40 people, that doctrine conformity becomes, just massive in terms of what it brings to the table. It's even just simple things like shield and armor or speed and, signature and how, right, you tank on Eve like in 3 general ways, right? Like on EHP, on speed, on signature, or on range, right? Those are the 4 big methods of tank, right? But if your fleet operates, different parts of it operate on different, tank parts, then, it doesn't work, right? And if your fleet is operating from different ranges, it doesn't work. And if your damages, don't work from the same ranges, it doesn't work. And that conformity just becomes so crucial to the successful fleet once you hit a certain scale that there's just no comparison in terms of like what you gain from having more people, which is why, you see those, fights from many years ago and even now where, you had these 50 to 60 guys fighting, 200 and winning, right? Because the doctrine provides them the tools to do so.
Yeah, I think the only advantage, like picking different ship types that might have the same tank and kind of the same range and like application and stuff, the big advantage of mixing the ship types is actually the engageability, right? So if you're not on a strategic fleet, you're just roaming around, you want to get a fight, then you're better off mixing it up a little bit. So it's not like it doesn't look too organized, and people might think it's a kitchen sink.
That's exactly right.
So like, that's
if you show up in 25 Lokis and you have like 2 Dictors and that's it, anybody in the right mind can figure it out. It's like, oh, they've got 18 damage Lokis and 7 rep Lokis and some tackle. Like, this is a pretty heavy duty fleet. I need like 60 dudes to fight this, right? Exactly. Or like a significantly equal sized heavy fleet.
You get if you look organized, you're gonna get engaged by double the numbers usually, right? If you look
organized, it requires an organized response.
Yeah, but if you look shit at D-scan, but you are organized in reality, you might get some really good fights, right?
Wow, Meta's going deep there. So you want to look shabby, but be organized.
Yeah, for sure.
To get that fight ability.
Into the concept of what people tend to call engageability. So like the super classic example from kind of low-sec back when it was all T1 cruisers is that one of the big popular fleets was Maulers with the lasers, right? They have a super high tank, they're really hard to crack, and they're just really, really strong. But if you flew like Thoraxes or Ruptors, which are just objectively worse, people would be willing to undock and fight you, A, at all, and B, with less stuff. So if you had a interesting take on Thoraxes and Maulers that had their own strengths and fought in their own special way, and you knew that much better than your opponents did, because everybody knew how Maulers worked, no one necessarily knew how Thoraxes or Ruptures or whatever worked, that gave you a huge advantage, as well as getting you the fight in the first place, which is a lot of the time so much of the problem. So many fleets are stood down at all scales of combat because people think, oh, we don't have a chance, or the odds aren't good enough. Whereas if you look weak and can still have that confidence, then that is a massive advantage.
Well, to getting the fight to happen, yeah. So it's like, if I can put it in really general terms, instead of having a nice, shiny suit of armor and a long spear, everybody knows what to expect when you see 20 of those guys show up. You might show up in, really dented armor and rusty swords, in order to be able to attract the fight, because somebody would say like, oh, that's just a brigand, I can take that guy on.
Yeah, like one of the examples, like the original Doctrine that we were flying with the Corp, but it's like a 10-man setup that actually was before Snatch. It's remote rep command destroyers, remote rep assault frigs, and so on. And if we would form these like 10 to 12-man gangs, we would always just take like 2 of each ship, right? So it would take like, let's say, 2 Confessors, 2 Sipwools, nowadays 2 Magus, 2 whatever, right? 1 crew or 1 Dictor. And then you look at a D-scan, you're like, well, they just threw some ships together, they're on a row, kitchen sink style. We might as well throw our whatever Brutixes in there, right? Well, boom, you got a fight, right?
Yeah. The kitchen sink concept, that is everything and the kitchen sink?
Yeah, exactly. That would just be like whatever you got, right? If it's armor tank, just bring it. And then you would just roam, right? It's a very old concept, though.
Yeah, it's very old.
Nowadays, it's just drunken fleets that do that. So
drunken
maybe
fleets.
Horde.
Oh, okay. So there are the recreational fleets that are just grab anything you have in your hangar and fly with us. But at the very minimum, it has to be healed, or not healed, but repaired the same way. So it needs to be armor tanked or shield tanked or whatever. Have you ever made concepts that really sucked?
Never.
Crickets.
Yeah, tons personally.
Well, okay. I made a lot of concepts that I never.
How about that backfired or didn't work the way you wanted to?
Oh, actually, I did once a smart bombing battleship fleet to like gank, what's it called? Incursion runners in high sec. But I took too many battleships, so we created so much tie-dye lag that we actually effectively didn't kill shit beside ourselves. So like 50 battleships down, everyone's security state is -10. Yeah.
Oh, that's
I had to listen to that shit for quite a while.
Were you involved in the disco battleships back in the day? That was a while ago. That
wasn't me coming up with that. But yeah, I was around there. The days of the Drake, right?
Yes. So going back in time, the Drake was popular. God, this was 2010 or 11. Drakes were becoming popular again because Titans, I believe, had their super weapons nerfed from an area of damage to a single point destruction, and that allowed the survivability of smaller ships like the battle cruisers, the Drake, which were tanked very well and very cheap. And so that made a whole, renaissance of the Drake as a PvP ship as opposed to the PvE ship it had been before that. And so a lot of missiles were used because that's what Drakes could use. And they could, with enough Drakes, you could put a lot of DPS on targets and alpha them through as you needed to. So Initiative created the Disco battleships, which were smart bombing battleships in a way to blow up the missiles that were coming in at them. And they were called Discos because they had, different lights, radiating from them. They looked like a giant crystal ball.
Yeah, there's a good video about that actually out there somewhere.
And some people think that was the beginning of what's called pipe bombing. Like that was
Rooks and Kings.
Yeah, the idea that led to pipe bombing.
But, oh, you think? I didn't know that, but yeah, it makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, I think it might have been a variation of that, but I don't know. The pipe bombing also, this guy named, I forgot his name, he used to be in DICE. He was from Dayshow Syndicate that was in Providence at the time, and they actually had pipe bombed Eve Radio long before Rooks and Kings did it. Now, I'm not saying they're the ones that pioneered it, but they did do it before live on Eve Radio. They basically timed it so when the guys jumped into the gate in Providence, they lit up all their smart bombs, which again is kind of like the, that sort of a concept. Well, anyway, the idea of Doctrine plays and stuff like that is now like a nullsec standard. For people that don't understand this game, like you can't really join nullsec without coming in with your weaponry a certain way. You get told when you join an alliance, this is the weaponry we use, this is the way we defend ourselves. Make sure that you can participate by buying all this equipment and stuff. And that to say that there's just kind of like, gear you bring to the team when you're going to join that team. I don't know. I kind of miss, like I said, it's not even worth talking about very long, but I miss the idea of basically just being able to grab whatever you have and participate and stuff. But
well, you still can join there's like Redemption Road, which is, for other players that just want to get into a kitchen sink fleet and go out. And sometimes they'll even give you a free frigate. So they'll have like a mini Doctrine of frigates, and you just go on a random road. It's a problem for us because we try not to shoot blues.
Right. Oh, Gidia there totally corrected me, and you were right. It was called the Firewall. That was that Doctrine. They were Disco battleships, but it was the Doctrine itself was called the Firewall Doctrine, to firewall the missiles out from destroying your ships. All right. Pando, it's been a real pleasure. We're going to have you on again. I want to know more about your FCing and stuff. You're doing a lot of great stuff with Initiative. You guys, you're probably the guy that really put them
we have a strong team.
Yeah.
It's not me, right?
Well, every time I talk to everybody from Sister Bliss to anybody in Initiative, they always talk about you. So I'm putting it at your feet there. You helped make them the Alliance of the Year for the Talking in Stations last year.
I contributed, yeah, but like I said, there's a strong team behind that. We have a good, healthy FC team that we help each other. There's no ego clash, which is not, which is one of the worst things that can happen in FC teams, I think, in alliances, that egos clash and they hinder each other. But we have a healthy team, and we've got the people who are willing to actually jump into weird stuff and try it out and trust the dude doing it.
So, oh my God. Speaking of FC egos clashing and stuff like that, that happens a lot in NC and PL, I'm sure. But what about Test? Because you have two really vocal FCs. You have Villy and you have Pro God Legend. How are you guys getting along?
We get along pretty well. There's it's always a challenge because any good FC will generally have some level of ego. But between myself and Pro God, there's no issues. We know how to work with each other pretty well at this point. There becomes issues from other people over time, but you know, they either learn to develop and work with us and we work with them, or they don't. And sometimes that stuff happens, sometimes it doesn't. You know, there's no perfect world, right?
Nope. I once had two FCs on a show that were actually at war with each other. I think it was NC and Providence. And they just wouldn't stop talking over each other. Which is kind of funny. Well,
I put that video, by the way, in your chat.
Oh, thanks. By the way, there's a great video. We'll post it in the show notes, but also I'll post it in public here for TIS. That was made by, I think, a test person. It has you kind of giving out commands and has sweeping music in the background. That's beautiful stuff. Have you seen that video?
Yeah, I saw it. It was, you know, you watch it and you go, aw, you know, it's like you're not trying to be, what would you say, heroic, or I don't know what the word would be, dramatic when you say many of these things, but, you know, a little bit of editing and sure enough, it can sound that, you know, more powerful than it is at the time. And it's a nice feeling, but on the other hand, you know, it's part of the deal, I guess.
Well, videos like that, they're always a good source of motivation, right? It's always great to look back every now and then. So yeah, actually, it's some good fun.
I think it's great long-term recruiting. You know, people want to belong to the cool group, not necessarily the best group or whatever, but just the group that's cool. And so those kind of videos really help build reputations. And so if you haven't seen it, it's one of the best videos I've seen as far as like an EVE fight. Usually people just kind of turn on crazy music and block all the stuff that's important and then expect you to kind of follow along. Those are made for EVE players. But this one is very consumable by somebody who doesn't know EVE, because you have the drama of the voice of the FC, in this case, Villy, talking to his guys, psychologically working them to keep them motivated, to keep them positive and keep morale high as things are happening that are completely unknown to him. You know, like how much this is going to escalate, how, you know, things are going to go and stuff. And it seems like his guys are executing very well. So it's a great video if you want to see what it's like. So check that out. We'll put it in show notes and we'll put it in public chat and chat as well. I think we already did. But yeah, thank you guys for a great show. We will wrap it up now. Next week, we're going to have Signal Cartel. We're going to talk about their mission in EVE, which is to bail people out of wormholes when they get lost. And Signal Cartel lives in wormholes and helps people get in and out of wormholes as a public service. I'd like to thank our engineer, McLeod, for putting up the images. Also our webmaster, Kaskora. And thank the Patreons. We got 2 new Patreons, major supporters, which is great because I think that's $10 a month level. And we're really happy to have more Patreons because our expenses are going up as we get new services and stuff like that. And I also want to say, join our Discord if you want. We'll put that inside of chat as well. But you can find us at talkinginstations.com. You can find back episodes. You can find the Discord entry there. And you can also figure out how to support us through Patreon or PayPal. I want to say thanks to our guests, Max.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Favor had to go earlier. And Pando and Billy, thank you guys.
Yep, thanks.
Pleasure as always.
And we will wrap it up today and see you next time on Talking in Stations.